Yo, what's up, everybody? So I was just thinking about this, right? Like, I was scrolling through TikTok and I saw this clip of a club, and I just had this moment where I was like, wait a minute, this is not how we used to do it. I mean, seriously, if you could just like teleport back to the early 2000s, man, if you could go back to the early clubbing days and those early 2000s, it was a whole different universe. The air was thick, you could barely see anything, and the bass was just thumping. You went there to just let your mind loose for a few hours. Now it's different. It's clean, it's bright, and everyone's just standing there holding their phone up. It's like, are you even here to party or are you here to film a documentary? Not saying that, filming a documentary is completely bad, because I know we do it for, to get paid nowadays. But, it's just like we don't get caught up in the moment anymore like how we used to. And this is kind of what I want to talk about today. We're going to break down, the massive, insane culture shock between the early 2000s dance floor and what we have now in, 2026. We're talking about the vibe, the actual dance moves, the whole sober curious thing, and even the fashion. And we're going to get into that sober curious thing shortly too, because that's actually a new movement that I kind of want to talk about. Now, if you're a millennial, get ready for some serious nostalgia. If you're a Gen Z, prepare to be shocked. Now, let's jump right into the biggest, most obvious difference, y'all. All right, so the number one thing that changed everything. I mean, just take a wild guess, guys. I know you guys know this one. It's the cell phone. Yes, yes, yes. The lovely camera phones. The camera phones is the number one biggest thing that changed it all. Back in the early 2000s, what happened in the club literally stayed in the club. Do you guys understand that? All right. You had no proof. If you had a camera, it was like a disposable one, and you wouldn't even get the pictures developed for a week. And when you did, they were like either blurry or like red-eyed or something of that nature. It was perfect. It gave you this incredible sense of freedom. All right. That's what we want. That's what we love. You could be a total mess. You could dance like an idiot. And it was just a shared secret with people who were actually there. Okay? Now you guys know the drill. You walk into a club and it's like a sea of little glowing screens. Everyone got their heads down. They're not looking at each other. They're looking at their phones, checking the angle, making sure the lighting is right for their story, for their perfect little story. I mean, in the 2000s, people had their heads up, man. You actually had to like make eye contact. That's how you met people. You'd be dancing, you'd lock eyes with someone, you'd have move a little closer, and if they moved closer, you knew it was on. It was all about that physical, in-person flirtation, man. Yo, check out my boy here. He's getting lit, man. That's my boy right there. Today it's like the club is a content factory, man. You're not just there to dance. You're there to produce content. Not that producing content is a bad thing, but, again, you're not caught up in a moment like how it was before. You're performing for the internet, not for, not for the person standing right next to you. It's wild. And don't even get me started on getting home. Remember the struggle? No Uber. You had to like fight for a taxi. You had to have that one friend who was the designated driver. Bless his heart. Bless his or her heart, by the way. Or, you would just try to convince someone to give you a ride home. It was chaos, but it was fun chaos, though. You got to remember, it was fun chaos. Now, it's just tap, tap, tap. Your ride is here. It's safer. We're talking about Uber, by the way, or Lyft. But it's definitely less of an adventure. All right? The whole vibe has gone from the gritty and spontaneous to curated and controlled. Now, let's get into the evolution of dance. All right? This is what we want to talk about. All right, let's talk about the actual dancing, because this is where I get really passionate. In the early 2000s, dancing was a more communal thing. Think about it, right? The cha-cha slide, the Cupid shuffle, Macarena. These were like group rituals. Everyone knew the moves. Everyone did them together. And it didn't matter if you were a good dancer or a bad dancer. You were just participating. It was about the shared energy. And yeah, there was a lot of that close physical dancing, that grinding that was just part of the culture. It was a full body social and all about the vibe, in the room. But now it's all about the TikTok dance, man. TikTok dance is a new movement now. And what are TikTok dances? They are like the 90% upper body focused, moves. Why? Because you're filming it. You need it to fit into that vertical frame. You need to be able to do it quickly and repeatedly. That has been like the main focus now. It's gone from social dancing to performative dancing. You're not dancing with the person next to you. You're dancing for the phone in your hand. The dance floor is full of people doing their own little solo routines, all trying to get that perfect shot for their feed, bruh. Like, I've seen it a lot, man. I've seen a lot of people doing that. Everybody just to themselves on these phones, man. Like, without the phones, man, I'm telling you, it's just a different vibe. Like, for real. The goal has totally shifted. It's not about losing yourself in the music anymore. It's about capturing a moment so you can get those likes and that validation later. It's like the dance is a tool for content, not a way to connect. And that, to me, is the saddest part of the whole thing. All right. And now this is where I wanted to get into that whole sober, curious movement, that, some people are actually following. Now, this is a huge one. And it's a total mind flip. Okay. Back in the 2000s, the whole point of going out was to get messed up, you pregame, because you were broke and you wanted to keep that buzz going. The whole culture was about excess and escaping reality, bruh. But now, especially with the Gen Z, now this one's gonna shock you. This one's actually gonna shock you. You're gonna be like, wait a minute, what are you talking about, Usher? But check this one out. There's this massive movement that's called Sober Curious, right? It's not even about being totally sober forever, but it's just about being mindful of how much you're drinking. And people are realizing, like, hey, maybe I don't need a massive hangover and a blurry memory to have fun. And it's crazy because, I actually kind of like this one because for a person that doesn't drink, I'm like that. I believe in having fun without the need to actually have a drink. Now, I'm not opposed to it and I'm not against it because, I do have friends that do drink. And let me tell you something, right? Drinking is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just you have to know how to do it in moderation. And I feel like a lot of people don't know how to do it in moderation. And, for someone that cannot hold their liquor, if you can't hold your liquor, it causes, a lot to go wrong, man. And, I think that people should drink to get that buzz so that they can go and have fun, right? But when you drink to get wasted, that's where, things turn out for the worse, right? And so people have especially like Gen Zs, some of them have kind of turned to that, right? To that movement. And it was created, and it created a whole new kind of life, nightlife. It's called soft clubbing. Like that's another term for it, right? And the soft clubbing obviously is the complete opposite of the 2000s club. It's quieter, it's earlier, and instead of the Jägerbombs, people are drinking like matcha lattes and detox shots. It's a rave, but the fuel is wellness. That's overall what it is, and not alcohol. I think it's because the stakes are so much higher now. In the 2000s, if you got too drunk, you just had a bad morning, right? If you get too drunk, now someone's like filming you, and that video could be on the internet forever. The constant documentation has actually pushed a whole generation toward a safer, more mindful way to party, right? It's safe from, partying to escape to partying for the community. They're looking for that third place, that spot that's not work and not home, where they can generally connect. The 2000s club was a place to forget your problems. The modern soft club is a place to like process and share your experience. It's like a total 180. And I kind of like the intention behind it, to a certain degree, to a certain extent, because, again, I don't have an issue with the drinking per se. I just think that people need to do it in moderation, and people just need to just know their limits, man. At the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to. Look at me, I'm just there, vibing out, enjoying myself. But it's all about, that's really what it comes down to. It just comes down to doing everything in moderation, man. That's really, really what it comes down to. And I want to talk about, the fashion real quick. All right. Let's talk about the drip. Yeah, that's the term they use today, the drip. All right. So now, back in the 2000s, it was wild. All right. Fashion there was wild. All right. It was low rise jeans, tiny little tops, velour track suits, those chunky belts. It was all about the look. And honestly, it was totally impractical. You were sweating, the clothes were sticking onto you, but you were making a statement. The clothes were, you know, the clothes were for the people in the room. Like, you know what I'm saying? Um, and the modern club outfit now is all about the aesthetic, for the feed. It has to look good in a vertical video. Again, we talked about having the cameras out and everything of that nature, right? It's often more comfortable, which is a plus, okay, but the primary function of the outfit is to, be a costume for the content. It's curated, it's planned, it's optimized for that 19 by 16 ratio, for that phone. Once again, we talked about the phone business. The fashion shift is just another way to see the culture shift, from the clothes that were about, the function of the night to the clothes that are about the aesthetic of the feed. So, once again, when it comes to the outfit now, right? We're talking about, you know, wearing, certain outfits for the gram, for the TikTok, for social media versus people who naturally dressed up, to come out, getting ready to dance. Nowadays, that's what people come out nowadays. People come out and they literally pay $20, just to dress up, look good, and just pose for the camera, and opposed to actually coming out to actually wanting to dance and move and actually vibe out. You know what I'm saying? So here's the final thoughts, guys. My final thoughts on all of this. Was clubbing better back then? I think it depends on what you wanted. The 2000s gave you raw and messy, unforgettable experience. It was a place to be totally present and just vibe. Why? Because there was no phones. There was no cameras like that. So it was a safer space, you know what I'm saying? Like people you know, it was what happened in the club, stay in the club. You know what I'm saying? There was no cameras to capture the moments like that, right? But the modern club scene, I think, well, actually, I think the modern club scene is a lot safer. Um, I think it is a lot cleaner, and it's all about content and wellness. It's a place to perform, but also a place to find a healthier community. I think so. And I think the biggest takeaway, though, that the club has gone from a social space to a content studio, and that one change has literally flipped the script on how we party. You know, um, what do you guys think, though? Which era had the better vibe? Let me know. In the comments below, and of course, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe, and ring that bell notification. You know what I'm saying? Let me know what you guys think. Um, what your era of dancing is. And don't forget to comment, like the video, and share your thoughts.